So I was wanting to build an induction charger stand for like your phone or whatever. So I wanted to make it so that it could sit on your desk and hold the phone in a position maybe where you can see it while it's charging. So I started in Fusion 360 and came up with this design. Now that angle there you'll see on the previous video where I built the jig to cut that. So here's a little logo on the front. That'll be made out of wood as well. And here's a rendering of what it should look like. First I'll work on the support. That's the piece that the phone rests against. This piece needs to be sliced down the center for the 1/8 inch plexiglass lens that will be put in between. The front half of that support gets a recess cut into it to accommodate the induction charger and the wiring. Here I'm cutting the plexiglass lens that will get put between the two layers of wood. Just making sure it's all lined up. So all three of these parts will be held together with screws. And it might seem like there's a lot of screws, but it's important to keep those edges tight together so that there's no gaps between the plexiglass and the wood edges. Anyway, pre-drill and countersink for each one. Here I'm using the jig that I built in the last video. I still feel like I could get better at this. So you'll see when I start tilting the table that my actions are a little jerky, and I wish they were smoother. But I just did the best I could, and like I say, with a little more practice, you could be even better at it. And then a bit of sanding. Now I'll start on building the base. I just print these full-size patterns from my drawings and use spray adhesive on the paper only to stick them on the wood. The base is built similar to the support in that it gets sliced in half and gets the lens inserted between. Here I'm cutting the interior out of the lens to accommodate lighting and wiring. And sanding. And more sanding. This part gets put together the same way as the support, just a whole bunch of screws. The plexiglass seems to gum up the drill bit, so I had to keep cleaning it out, because if the plastic is still in there, it just heats it up and ruins the hole. Then I realized I forgot to cut the slot where the support fits into the base. So here I'm just setting up the saw to make that cut. So you'll notice here that I only made one cut, and that is because instead of trying to guess what the exact thickness of the support winds up being, I figured just one cut and then put the back on, and then whatever the thickness of that support is, the mirror cut on the other side of that same piece of wood will just come up against that, and the exterior sides of this base are all going to get trimmed anyway, so looks kind of weird right now, but that's the idea. Here you can see I'm using a piece of tape as a depth gauge on the drill bit. This helps me not drill all the way through. I used a Sharpie to put a mark on the countersink so that all the depths of the screw heads will be the same. So because I just did the one cut instead of cutting the slot, I just added another pattern on top so that I could make sure I was keeping everything lined up. So here I'm cutting the 14-degree angle on each one of the four sides of the base. And sanding. So here I'm just trimming off a 1/4 inch of material because the logo only needs to be a 1/2 inch thick. And drilling the access holes for the jigsaw. And then lots and lots of cutting. So here I was experimenting with a special blade that can cut in all directions, but I didn't really like it, so I put the other blade back on. And there's the logo. Now it's time to get the two parts put together. I had a little trouble keeping that clamp on there because of all the angles. So I took it apart temporarily just to put some finish on it. And now it's time to put the electronics in and the lights. So the idea here is to cut into the USB cable and tap into the power lines to get power for the lights. So I'm going to repurpose this battery-powered LED string for my lights. So there's a little circuit board in there where I can unsolder the wires from the battery box. So we'll need a resistor for the LEDs to not only protect them but to control how bright they are. So I'll just connect the resistor in line. Here I'm tinning the LED wires. Getting some heat shrink tubing ready. Connect the power back up. And putting the heat shrink on. Then I can connect the positive lead to the LEDs. And then connect the negative side of the main line and the LEDs. And get the heat shrink on that one. I thought it would be a good idea to put a larger piece of heat shrink on the whole thing, but you'll see later I took it off because it just made the line too bulky and stiff. And then we test out our connections, make sure everything works. Next, I'll open up the case and install all the lights and the charger. Get it the right way around. And then I'll just stick all the lights in with hot glue. And then check it one more time, make sure it works before I put the cover on. Then I'll put the lights in the base. And then put everything back together. Okay, I think it's done. Wow, that looks cool. Let's go try it out. So this project had a few challenges that were fun to figure out, and I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and I'll see you on the next one.